Welcome to the Post-War podcast recorded at Kalmark Studios Bunker, somewhere hidden in Berlin. I'm Pablo Deneri, your host, and today's guest is Serbian DJ, producer, and sound designer Nikola Grebovic, also known as Scalameriya. Nikola, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Pablo.
How long since we don't see each other?
Somewhere between 10 and 12 years.
We met once, I think.
Yeah.
But we had, at this time, a musical relationship. And then since then, it's been like 11 years or so.
Somewhere between 10 and 12, definitely. Let's say 11. But yeah, it was, we met, we've been in contact for a long time before that and after, but met in person just once on that occasion.
So how have you been these 11 years?
I can't complain.
Okay.
I can't complain. What about you?
Yeah, all good.
Going.
I know you started very early with music. I would like you to tell us a bit about your first contact, because I know with 13 years old you were already into techno and growing up in Serbia, something that is in your bio, of course, but I would like that you tell with your words what it meant for you, this first contact with techno. Actually, that is what you specialized in.
So I did start around that time, but the first contact would be something that I remember only for one reason, and it was because it was game related. So you probably know Ghost in the Shell.
Video game related.
Yeah. So okay. I'll get to it, but it's quite interesting, and it's related to a track that I even play nowadays. But Ghost in the Shell, you know, as probably anime, and then the movie has been made.
Cyberpunk.
Recently. Yeah. But there was this video game, and I don't know if you know it, for PS1. It was.
I never played it. No.
Yeah, it was like 97, I guess. 97, 98, something like that. I can't remember the exact year, but I had the game for PS1, and the intro for that game was the track that was made by Takio Ishino, and it was a legit techno track, which I didn't know at that time. And the intro is like a small...
was soundtrack from the anime film?
Yeah. So no, not the anime. So this was specifically made for the video game.
Okay.
So it was the intro, like with some shooting or whatever, but the music was playing in the background. And I didn't know what it was, but I just know that I was... Because you couldn't replay that. You had to reset your PlayStation. So I was resetting my PlayStation for like 5-6 times to, listen to it and then play it. But that was the first conscious contact with it. I didn't know what it was, but that I can remember. And then when I was 13, I started buying like CDs. And then shortly after that, records, just discovering more and more.
How did you go from a soundtrack in a video game to knowing what to buy, like as a CD music?
So I was obsessed with sound as long as I can remember, like even when I was a kid, and I was always curious like how the sound effects were made, or you would hear certain, I don't know, Terminator 2 had really interesting sounds in the tracks as well, from Brad Fidel, or if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And then there was, the Aliens movie, the screeches and all those like metallic distorted violins that were super stereo and so on. And obviously, I didn't know anything about it, but I was super obsessed about all of that. And I think it just kind of clicked together when you're growing older and everybody is talking about the music, and somebody's into this one, somebody's into that one. And I wasn't into any of, I don't know what was popular back then. On one side,
Serbia?
But on one side you had hip hop, you had the metalheads, and you had Serbian folk, which was basically just a folk because in Serbia. And, I started going to CD stores, and I think by accident I found a CD which was a combination of techno trance and so on. And I liked the techno tracks. So from then, like, you would go nowadays, you remember the artists, you start searching for it, and slowly expanding your collection view, knowledge about artists and so on. So it just steamrolled after that. And there was one point where it clicked at me, like when after the first party that I went to, which
But
my
you were not
mom
13
my mom had to buy the ticket for me, but I was big back then, so they let me in. But my mom had to buy the ticket because it was in pre-sale,
Yeah.
and it was like, this is what I want to do. And then I started researching for production, DJing slowly. First with one turntable because I didn't have two, so it was like from my computer to the mixer, it was a line, and then you
Right.
mix one until you learn, then you put everything down,
Just
reset.
you learned mixing with 13 years old?
When I was 15, I was playing already at
15?
clubs.
No.
Yeah. And the clubs were like 21 plus, so I was a 15-year-old DJ
Right.
there. Yeah, so it was super fun, beneficial in some ways, traumatic in some others.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I'm always proud that I started being able going to 21 plus electronic clubs with 17 years old, you know. But
There
you
we
were
go.
playing there with 15. I think you won.
Yeah. 1-0. Let's go. Let's take notes until the end of the podcast. But yeah, some parts of it were amazing. Some were not so good because they were not so good experiences, but they worked out good because I learned from them. It was the interaction with older DJs.
How was
And
it even possible that you are allowed to play so young in a club?
I don't even know how how it started. Like the first party that they played was a friend of my neighbor was passing my next to my room when I was like practicing. Actually, no, I was in still my parents' house, and then they came together to like see who's playing that music. First, they thought it was my mom. So nobody knew I was DJing and so on. And it was a meme because I was so young to get me to the first party. It was an open air party, and then after that, it was just like it was interesting to people. And I took it way too serious and with
still
obsessive
do.
practicing and so on. Yeah, I still do.
And because I can imagine in Serbia, just like in Argentina, like non-industrialized countries, techno culture is not so common or so natural from the get-go as it was here in Berlin or in Detroit. It was a very small or special thing, I can imagine, in relation.
For sure. The issue is that we were isolated for a couple of different reasons, and for me it was like growing up in a bubble regarding that. It was something that I was very interested in, but nobody around me was really doing it seriously, especially production wise. There was no way to find out things, so everything I learned had to be reverse engineered.
It was not YouTube at the time.
There was no YouTube, but also if I wanted to do it, like the connection was so horrible that if I wanted to download one track, it would take me like 1.5 days.
Right.
Like leaving everything on, and then you would have to pay the phone bill, which my parents wouldn't like so much. So
A telephone connection. We are
yeah,
talking ages ago.
yeah, we're literally talking,
Yeah.
I don't know, 2001, 2, 3. So
Yeah.
it was bad. Plus, Serbia had everything worse regarding the standards, including the internet connection at that point. So it was a struggle finding people that are into the same thing, although there were some in my city number. Obviously, there were clubs, but not somebody who's like deeply. Like I would remember catalog numbers from the records, you know, like that would go that far. And another issue is like people who were into similar things were split between cities. So like I'm right in the middle of
Small
Serbia.
scenes.
Sorry, what?
Small scenes.
Small scenes, but not just that. Like in individuals. Like now everybody thinks because from Serbia there's also Lag, Ontal, my brother, and so on. But for example, Lag and Ontal are all split from where I was. So I'm in the middle, they are in the north, but even from each other, they're like 1 hour, 1.5 hours away. And everybody thinks that we grew up in the same scene, which is not correct. We were all like individually situated in different cities. And then obviously Belgrade was for Marko Nastic, and not just Belgrade, whole Serbia. He was a monster of a DJ back then. We all looked up to him. I mean, even now, but now he's doing something very different. But at that time, it was, for me, it wasn't like learning how Jeff Mills was playing. Like it was like I
Right.
need to be that good, or I'm not worthy of playing, and so on. But
Hmm.
yeah, I strayed away from your question just to tell you that we were not concise scene. It was just like fragments, and the issue was that we were cut off from the whole world because of war sanctions and so on. We were not allowed to travel until like 2009. So although I started that young, I couldn't plan this. I did plan it as a career, but like I couldn't do anything about it until 2009. Then I
Right.
could like really go for it and play internationally. Before that, it was just to get a visa would take like 3 to 5 months
I
for
understand.
anything.
It's post-Cold War stuff, East European stuff.
Uh, kind of. Serbia is was involved in used to be Yugoslavia, so it was
Right.
involved in wars between something that was supposed to be the same people. And it's very complicated and not something that I don't want to talk about. It's just that I don't know how to explain it
Yeah.
to you. But it's literally like half of your country says, okay, 200-300 years ago, this used to be a separate country. We are different people. We are autonomous. The other one says, you're not allowed to do that. They start the war. And it was clustered into 3 different regions. And many atrocities were committed, and then we were bombed in 1999, Serbia specifically, because what I was talking about is events that happened in Croatia, Bosnia, and so on.
Right.
And as a result of all that, Serbia got bombed in 1999,
Wow.
and then before that and after that, we had sanctions for many years, and
Right.
horrible living situation, obviously, because I
But we
remember
met.
there's
We met online. I think about this time, 2000, before you were able to start going out of Serbia
yes, a bit before, a year or two before we started like getting into
in the
contact.
minimal techno scene.
Yes.
Online when it
Yes.
was this explosion of the net labels and the ones that were into dark, more experimental dark things.
Yeah,
kind
it
of
was lovely,
style.
dude. Like I remember when I discovered all you guys. Just it was in a moment where I got sick of techno, because what's happening right now to techno was happening back then around 2005, 2006, where everything was just going harder, faster, and nonsensical. And I was just moving into enjoying music for whatever genre. So I would be playing a combination of electro, breakbeat, minimal. House, some good techno that I could find, minimal obviously, and by chance I discovered that there's how many of you were from Argentina? Like 5 or 6.
We were a gang, yeah.
Yeah,
All hanging out at my place.
it was. It was like you were all situated in one
Buenos
house
Aires.
or something like that, right?
In my apartment.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we were making parties there. We had the studio
Yeah, I
there.
remember.
Of course, the scene was bigger. There was this DJs from the 90s and so. But this new scene of making it minimal with computers in Buenos Aires, kind of, it's also, I guess, like in Serbia, it was very small, very focused thing, like in a bubble, And that's for us. It was also very liberating to find online. I guess it was MySpace at that time. No?
MySpace was magical, man. I hate social media nowadays, but MySpace was maybe because I was younger. I don't know, but it wasn't so invasive, and it was up to you to discover.
You miss
people.
MySpace.
If I could switch the social media that's present right now to MySpace, I would 100%. Like I discovered so many people because it was you were not being fed by the algorithm. It was on you to what you want to follow or visit the pages from, and yeah. But you said it was quite. It was a small community for you and so on. But I think Europe perceived you a bit different because whoever I met had huge respect for you guys. And, I remember I at least thought that you have, I don't know, 10 different parties happening at the same time in Buenos Aires as well. But I obviously didn't know anything back then.
There was a lot of myths also. you know, a lot of mythology
Yeah,
going on. Not all of that is real.
could be, because I know there was also a lot of articles about your collective as
Yeah.
well.
At
Even
the
in
time, yeah, because it was very different from
yes, it
everything
was.
else, you know. It's like for us to play in Cocoliche, which was the only techno club run by the 90s official techno DJs. To play there for our generations with computers, it was very difficult. It was a huge process until one of the owners, one of these DJs from the 90s that was owners of this club, bought a label, a record from Seth and me in Spain, and then she made it a hit in the after hours there, and then she realized we were kids from Buenos Aires, and then they said, okay, you can play with computers in the, in the club. But this transition was difficult in a way.
Yeah, it was weird because first computers were frowned upon, and then everybody was using computers. And now it's becoming more rare because CDJs are getting so good that nobody wants to carry a computer with themselves. But I remember in the beginning, like if you wanted to bring a computer, even if it was for a Serato, it was like,
Yeah.
like weird
No,
looks.
yeah, totally. And going back to Serbia and to this time where you were able to, for the first time, go out of the country and start actually playing abroad, and so, what do you recall from this time? What did it mean for you?
It it was surreal because the issue is, I guess now when somebody from Europe starts and they're really committed, so I'm not talking about somebody who's doing it a couple of hours a week. I was doing that 9 hours a day just to, stay alert. Uh, Something should happen for you in that regard, like playing in other countries within a year or 2 or 3, if you're really committed and good at it. And for me, there was this vacuum of me being a kid, and then towards me being, I don't know, 18, 19, where I was ready for that, but I wasn't
Still a
able to
kid,
do
sorry.
it. Yeah, but a different age group, I
Yeah.
would say. But there was this vacuum of 4 or 5 years where it was very depressing because it was nothing I could do about it. Just wait. So imagine waiting for something to happen. That's why, not to mention it, but what happened in 2020 was hard for me because it was staying at home and waiting for it to end. So it was the same thing I had in that period
Right.
from 2005, 6 to 2009, where you're waiting for it to happen. So when the first gig happened, and it was obviously a cheap gig and so on, but it was just surreal that it finally happened. And from then it just evolved from gig to gig, and more gigs, better conditions, and better surroundings and so on. But what I remember specifically was this thing like, okay, is this really finally happening?
Also, this minimal, so born net label, born minimal electronic music made by kids at this time was a bit marginalized by the official like dance music scene, or at least I felt it that way. You know, it was too new. It felt like something a bit too quirky and too new to work in the official.
I think in the
system.
first couple of let's say in the first 2 years maybe, but then I think it became trendy. The issue was because it became trendy, then it was similar thing that's happening in the last couple of years. It was evolved into something that's more profitable and so on, because you had Minus, who was kind of also supporting that sound at that point, and like techno was kind of going away and redefining itself. It became slower in that period, like those 4 or 5 years, let's say. So you couldn't even find what was popular in 2005 being released from some Spanish labels maybe, and that's it. But I think what you said, that sound being marginalized, I think it was only the beginning. Then it became popular for a couple of years and it just faded away.
Very little years.
Yeah,
Maximum
sadly.
3 years, I would say.
But it was different times. Now, for example, this trend of super hard ravey techno is staying for way longer than it should be, and I'm starting to get afraid that, because you always talk about these cycles in techno, like what's becoming trendy and going out of fashion. Maybe that will change because of social media and perception of the younger generations. So I'm not seeing any evidence of it going away yet.
Jeff Mills says techno is forever. That is classic.
True, this what I'm talking about. For me personally, is not techno. Like, I don't want to sound like a judgmental bastard, but it is. I'm being put in that that box. Sadly, for me, techno is something that constantly evolves, and it's not about the trend. Excluding those 4 or 5 years that I was talking about earlier, that I had to take a break from techno specifically and do a combination of styles because it was pissing me off way too much. Plus, I was younger and more angrier.
You mean when it went more house?
Yeah, when I went more into that direction, and I kind of rediscovered myself through that minimal sound. And the issue is, whenever you say minimal, it's like a curse word right now. But those people who say minimal was bad, I would agree with them, because what they mean was bad was really bad. But this other side has to be discovered, like what Youssef, Dilo was doing, Keek, and so on. For me, it was just like a different form of the same let's be cheesy and say spirit that I was after few ways back, because like if you compare, I don't know, a Grovskopa record with Seth, they are obviously vastly different, but they are all super dark. It's just that Grovskopa was faster and industrial, and Seth was more fantasy-like, let's say.
Right, Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Also video game born.
Yeah, he is. He was into.
He's a Final Fantasy fan,
Okay,
of course.
there we go. So
And but you definitely changed your sound since then, and now it's more in the realms of techno or post-techno, even though something remains from these intelligent elements, should I say, not only repetitive sounds, but there's a lot of things happening. And it's, I think it's in your bio that says that people say that your sound is hard and aggressive, but you choose heavy and intimidating instead.
Yeah, because the closest to my sound that a regular club goer can compare it to is probably this hard ravey stuff that I was talking about, that I'm not playing, and each to their own, but it's not for me. And in that context, I can understand why they perceive it as hard and aggressive. Like it's super noisy, super distorted, and so on. Whereas my sound is closer to minimal structurally, and it usually carries a lot of weight instead of rushing it. It's slower than that as well, less sounds, but those sounds are bigger, therefore heavier. And I'll never express aggression in music. For me, it's always this alertness. Let's say intimidation, or like somebody's breathing down your neck, or like I don't want to clap because of the mic, but somebody's clapping next to you. Wake up! Which, in context of a party, sometimes doesn't work because people want to get hypnotized. But I think that's the difference. It's like when you're comparing a slasher horror towards something where it's done classy, where you don't see what's happening, but you're more scared of it. Let's say.
Right. Yeah, I understand. It's strong, but not aggressive.
Yeah, I never. My intention, at least, is never to show aggression in my music.
Which is challenging in techno music, so to say.
Yeah, it's.
Hard
aggression. If you say intimidation, it is a full form of aggression, I guess, but not intimidation. It's in the sense of like somebody's intimidating you. It's just that the presence of it should like alert your senses of sense of danger, let's say. And why that is, I don't know, but that's something that was attractive and planned to me from the very beginning, or maybe something that is familiar, sadly,
Yeah.
to me. But
Because you're
yeah,
Serbian or what? You're dark.
Serbian family situation and so on. But yeah, what you said about the sound earlier, that I'm more back to that. How I sound like now is how I wanted to sound when I was a kid, but I was incapable of doing that because I didn't have the knowledge that I accumulated over the years. You know, because it was always about expressing the idea. And to express the idea that you have, you need to have the knowledge to replicate the sound in your head.
Sure.
So it took some time to learn to quickly get sounds out of your head to the project. And yeah, this is where I want to be with it. And from now, I just want to evolve that sound and not stray
Right,
from
because your
it.
music now is a lot faster, a lot heavier, but it's still hypnotic. It still has a lot of layers. There's still a lot going on. I think it keeps some aspects from minimal, not in the sense that it's little elements, but there's a way, a more intelligent way in how these elements can interact with each other, and there's a lot of things going on. You know, it's not boring, I have to say.
Means a lot coming from you. Thank you.
And but it's music that is made for playing in a club, right? So the final product really happens when people dance to that in a club. Or how do you see that?
This will sound a bit selfish, but I never care how people will react to my tracks, in the sense of when I'm making them. Of course, it makes me happy if my music is making people dance, and if they enjoy it. Ultimately, that's what it's for. But while I'm making my sound, I really don't care about it. The only thing that I pay attention to is that it's structurally made. Like, even when I'm making offbeat and breakbeat tracks, or something a bit more experimental, I'm trying to keep positions of arrangement where it's convenient for DJs to mix in and out. In the sense of, like,
Right.
the main part needs to stop and not go until the end, so it's easier for the DJ to plan and
To be able to mix it, actually.
yeah, and do tricks, whatever. But in the sense of, like, is it going to work on the dance floor? I don't think about that. I don't think I ever
Interesting.
thought about that. It's just that I make it as good as possible production wise, so that it's going to sound nice. So if somebody's going to dance to it, ultimately it's not really up to you. It's something very subjective, because I see a lot of people coming to parties and they basically have a performance planned, or a way of dancing, instead of, because if you ask me, dancing is reaction to a rhythmic structure, right? And sometimes people complain that my sound is too broken and it's hard for them to
Really?
dance to. Yeah.
I mean, you can find the beat easily, I would say.
That's what I mean. But for other people, it's not like that. You know, they want to express the
Group.
moves that they practiced, or the moves that they practice don't fit with the beats that I'm playing, but fit with something that's more faster or slower.
Right.
So it's kind of difficult to predict. Like, only if you want to go through this line of very functional, big room festival kind of techno, you can kind of make a recipe for it. For what I'm trying to do, there's no recipe, so it's always a gamble if people are going to
You're an
dance or not,
explorer.
or how it's going to be presented to them. Like, sometimes you can, when you're DJing, you can sneak things in that if you played it a different way, it wouldn't cause a reaction. But if you played it on a very in a very choppy way, or after a track that suits it, then it's going to work. But if you're like doing the classical fade in and fade out,
We're not.
it's
Yeah.
just weird.
Don't you
So
dance when you produce? Don't you try to like test it? In
no,
that
no,
sense.
no. I mean, I do these movements, of course, like unconscious rhythmic reaction to the rhythm, but like dancing and so on. No, I don't have that. I don't know how to explain. It's weird for me. For me, it's all about realizing the idea that I have, and it just happens with my history that uh, techno fits for that the most. Because the only thing that I would see myself doing musically besides techno is I don't know, music or specifically sound design for video games, for example.
Did
Because
you
it's
do gigs as sound designer?
uh, for video games, no, sadly. I wish I would, because that would be something very interesting to me. The issue with that is, like, even if, let's say, I want to commit myself with that, it's not about sending a demo or resume to someone. Like, it's about the network.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that with everything in life, but
Yes.
with sound design, it's very specific, and they tend to book people who are within that network, and I just don't think I have the I don't want it that bad to spend that much of my time networking for it, because I already am doing something that I always wanted to do. But for the future, we will see. It is something that would be a challenge and a pleasure for me.
It would be interesting with your story to go back to be like sound
Yeah.
designer for video games. It has to be something Japanese.
Yeah, imagine they do a remake of that game, and I get
Exactly.
to make a track. Like, that would be.
It would be perfect conceptually.
I don't even have words, but yeah.
And you said you, even though your music sounds pretty much club prepared and big room prepared, you say you explore kind of the unknown and the limits into which you don't know 100% if it will work or not. And actually, your artist name, Scalameriya, in Serbian, has to do a bit with this unknown. Tell us a bit about it.
Yes. So Scalameria means, like, basically a gadget, but in the sense of how your great grandmother would define, if you had, it's just like a device that would have no specific or maybe no purpose at all. You call us Scalameria in Serbian. Like, let's say we just kid bash, take a leg of the loudspeaker, some screen, and so on, and we try to make something, and you would call that a Scalameria.
When
You
did you
know?
choose your name from the beginning, or
No, no, no. First, I was going with my real name, and then I was, I don't know, 16, 17, 16 to 18, let's say, not no later than that. And I was laying on my bed, completely hangover from the night before. And there was some, and I was thinking about changing my name. I just didn't want anything cheesy or predictable. And as I was laying there, hangover, there was this old movie that I still don't know the name of. But there's a scene where a boat is just crossing the river, and the boat was called Scalameria. And I was just
Okay.
like, that's it.
Perfect.
Done. I just switched the K and the J because I didn't want people to call me internationally
you
Scalamerija
changed the K into a C and J
into a Y.
into a Y? Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you feel right now after so many years of career, after achieving the sound you wanted from when you were a kid? How you feel about techno scene itself and how it's evolving?
That's very ambivalent for me because on one hand, I really don't like where it's going, and I think it's in crisis. But then there are a lot of people who are really good at it. The issue is that those people are underrepresented. So on one hand, I can complain about it until tomorrow. But I also have things that I can praise. I think we evolved technologically as well, and it's much more accessible for everyone. The issue is that it's becoming more industry oriented, let's say, and
Commercial, you mean? Or
commercial, and it's becoming more trendy. And I don't have any issues with that in the sense of something being trendy in itself, but all of that brings a lot of other issues, like what's being demanded, how it's being presented, what's being released. The shelf life of a record now is 3 days, so it's you know, before you
of a physical record.
yeah,
Mean
you
like a
would
vinyl.
you would release a record, and you know, everybody would play it for like 3 months to a year, and now it's just like people play it for 2 weeks and it's done. Give me the new one, and so on. And that's because they're used to it, but also because the music is not as good, so it's just expendable. And
Sorry to laugh to the ones making this music.
well, the thing with that is I don't want to ridicule anyone, because what's good for me, it can be bad for somebody else.
Right.
But I also think that there is this collective level that somebody reaches of quality perception over the years. So um, I'll give you a perfect example. I don't like drum and bass, but I can comment on the quality of a drum and bass track. Like, I don't enjoy it, but if a track is really good, I cannot say anything bad about it.
You're a producer.
You know, it's
you appreciate the production, I guess, or how
yeah,
it's
the
made,
production, or it can be a great
or the
composition that I just
composition.
don't. I like hearing it at that moment, but I will not play it again at home. You know, it has good sound design, it
Right.
has really good a good mix down, it has a good story or whatever. With this techno, the trendy stuff, I also hate calling it techno because it's really not. But who am I to say? If the
Right.
kids say it's techno, it's techno. I can't do that because it just sounds to my ears like a complete noise mush. I don't know how to describe it exactly. And I had this thing where I would say each to their own. If what they're playing, what they're listening to, when they're going to parties, what they're dancing to makes them happy. I shouldn't be concerned with saying it's good or bad, or uh, however I perceive it. The issue is all of that bleeds into us, because now that is expected from us. I am being sandwiched. Let's say I play a peak time set. The kid before me plays that sound, finishes at 165 BPM.
I
What am I
could never
supposed?
do that.
What am I supposed to do after that? You know, like, and it's fine. I like parties. Like, my ideal party would be somebody
And your
playing.
music is fast.
Sorry, what?
Your music is fast.
For me, yes. That's the issue. Like, but that's irrelevant to
Right.
how the scene is perceiving it. But what I wanted to say, mainly why it's becoming an issue, is because it's becoming so trendy that all the potential new Surgences, Regises, you know, the guys
Yeah.
who are supposed to be unique and great in the
Yeah.
future. Like, I'm talking about kids who are now 18, 20, 21, whatever. The first thing they see is that sound when they go online and watch the DJ podcasts, and then they see also really mediocre, if not horrible, DJ skills, and they think that's the standard because the people who are performing it are famous, and that's what they see on Instagram. And people don't differentiate between being best at something and being famous.
Being famous in Instagram and being bad in some discipline.
So for them, that's the standard, and they think, okay, I need to get that good. And then remember that in the beginning, I was talking about Marko Nastic, who was a fucking ninja with 3 turntables, and for me, that was the norm. I had to be that good
That
to be
good.
allowed into the clubs. So now we will have new generations who are satisfied with less and who are not putting enough work for it to evolve it further. So this is a bit philosophical, and it could be
Yeah.
a bit boring. But
No,
that's
but
why I have an issue, not an issue, but it's starting to affect me both actively and passively. Actively in the sense is who am I getting booked with, what is expected of me,
right.
and passively is what's going to happen with the new generations in 5, 10 years and so on, with the new producers, new
Yeah.
DJs, and so on.
It's interesting because this logic that the music gets old very fast and so used to have to do with this digital only music, you know. But you're saying that happens also, it doesn't matter the format, so to say. You think there is a format definition in the sense of vinyl versus digital or streaming, something of that is format transformation that has to do with this shift?
I don't think so. I just think the only difference is that people who are buying records are because of the price differences, and because it's more likely that they are more into music, are more careful, and appreciate more what they're buying. That's my guess, because I can only judge all of that from my experience from the past, which is very different from
There's
what.
there's too much, you mean, right now, too many options, or
Yeah, I think there is too many options, and there's too little record buyers. I think it's still going, of course, but uh, I don't think those are specifically like. I know a lot of people who are just buying techno records and they're not DJs. Or they are DJs, but they're not aspiring to be DJs in the club. Like when they want to listen to records,
yeah.
they play one. They when they
Yeah, the
finish
traditional music collectors, they
Yeah.
still exist, so to say.
God bless them. But everything is now faster, and I don't want to shit on social media, but it is our reality. It is our future, and I'm the fool in the end for not being able to use it properly. Because I do think that if you use all of its benefits while you're not changing the product,
Right.
it's fine. The issue becomes when like you become the product and your activity on social media is the product. So,
I
but
understand.
anyway, I don't want to sound bleak or anything, but I am concerned because as I've spoken about those cycles in the past, I don't think that's necessarily going to repeat. So I feel this sense of uncertainty. I'm talking about for the next 5 to 10 years, not like next year or so on. Because if we're going through these cycles,
Right.
right now minimal should be trendy again.
That was my calculation, but it's not happening, man.
Yeah. The only hint that they have now, people are going back to do that sort of a tribalistic techno from 2005 that, there were some good records, but that basically pushed me out of techno because everything sounded the same. So I see more records like that popping up, but when I'm playing and hearing people who are playing with me, I don't see evidence of it. Obviously, I sound very dramatic about it. Obviously, there are some
I mean, you're right in the
amazing
middle of
people.
it. You're dedicated to this since you are a kid, literally, and you are more than ever, playing and producing and traveling, and so I think it has a weight what you say about it, or how you feel about it. You know.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it for me because I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing, and I'm not concerned about it job wise. I'm concerned about the quality of it, and I'm concerned about the tracks that I'm going to be able to play, because that's also a struggle right now. Like
Right.
there's some people who are bugging nonstop. Yeah, did you make something new? Please send me in advance. I don't have anything to play. And for the way I'm playing, I'm switching tracks very fast. So I need between 30 and 40 tracks for in an hour, and it has to be engaging for me. I need to have new stuff from time to time. I can't keep playing the tracks that I discovered 5 months ago, or
Right.
tracks that I've been playing as much as I want them to.
Yeah.
Like I'm still playing some from 2000s. I don't know, 1, 3,
Wow.
whatever, because I still love them, and I was banging them as a kid.
Yeah.
But uh, you know, it's a lot of tracks for a
Right.
2-3 hour sets, and I don't want to play the same tracks over and over again.
Yeah.
First of all, it's not interesting for me, and then I want to present new stuff to people when I'm playing. And right now there's even situations where I have to make a track real quick just to have something to play to add on top. That's it.
But that's a luxury that you can make your own fast track to play when you're lacking tracks to play. I mean, you can produce it.
Yeah, or another thing that they do, and what I'm gonna say is, of course, just for me. Like if I like some track from the past and it's not available in digital, I will make my own version because I'm able to copy whatever I hear. So I'm just going to make it like my track, but let's say it's Umex Lanicor, and I'm not
No
going
idea.
I'm not going to
That
release
is.
it. Yeah, you're from a different scene or whatever. Let's say Seth's Vodkrans for whatever reason
Yeah.
is not available anymore,
Right.
and I really want to play it. And I just sit down, and in 2 days I recreate it, and then I play it.
I thought you were meaning like a genre of music,
No,
like
no,
a
no,
candycore.
a specific,
Okay.
specific track.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, and I'm underlining, and it's also annoying for people because a lot of them, when they hear my recorded sets, they ask for ideas, and 50% of it is unreleased. And I've been getting comments that I'm doing that because I want to be mean or whatever, but I don't have other
Is that
options.
problematic legal-wise also when you play in an official event?
No, because you're basically playing something that doesn't exist. It can be problematic if you release it, but I will never do that because it's fucking disrespectful. So if I made, people are doing bootlegs and releasing all the time.
Right.
I never did that. I never will. Some of let's not name names, but a lot of people just cut out a piece of a song.
You can name the names.
And I don't want to.
Okay.
And I'm talking about pop here.
Okay.
So, and then they glue it together and it's a track. So if they can do it, I can make a track
This
out of my
mashup,
own scenes. Yeah, but not a mashup. I just recreate everything unless there's vocals or something like that. I just recreate it, play it in my sets, and that can also come across selfish, but the only reason why I'm not releasing those tracks is because I find it disrespectful, and some of them maybe I will in the future, but only if I get or want to be bothered getting the license to do it. And that's it.
I agree. I could also not approach music in that way, not even used samples or so. I share this approach of more like an scientific investigation, creating sounds, But of course, live music is very diverse, and the scene change a lot, and productions means also change. Nowadays, we are assisting to all these AI-assisted. Sure, in music we had these randomizer things. We were always playing a beat somehow with these random things. But right now we have really concrete new tools for reproducing or inventing from scratch music. How do you feel about these new AI tools in production?
First, I think that it's completely irrelevant how we feel about AI. AI is here to stay unless there is some system in place where it can be completely banned, but I don't see, or contained even, I don't see how that's going to happen. And second of all, I personally am not afraid of it because for me, I know it's going to sound very silly. It will be a challenge. Because it's been a while where I want to be in that position where when I was young and I didn't know how things were done, and then it was driving me into getting better and better and better and so on. And obviously now I want to beat myself from 2 days ago in the sense of like, can it do these things better? And I think it's going to be even more fun with AI in that sense. And I think people who are afraid, and the only ones who I've seen complain about it specifically in music online, I should be careful with my words here so I don't offend someone. But if you're making mediocre music, you should be afraid of AI. That's what I want to say. In the end, you also shouldn't be afraid of it, because if it's here to stay, maybe you can incorporate it in your own work and so on. So I'm not like, oh, we're going to lose our job. And also, if that's the case, I can't do anything about it.
Right.
So either coexist with it, find a way to make it interesting for yourself. A lot of people sound right now as a random pattern randomizer.
Right.
Anyway, so
but that's what I
basically,
mean. It existed already in techno music production that was already not tonal and not, you know what I mean? Not music in that sense. These co-creation things with aleatory stuff existed in techno production for many years.
But think about it this way. I don't remember what it was. Sadly, I can't tell you to look it up. Maybe with what I described to you now. But I remember like when electronic music was first shown, it was looked upon like a monstrosity, like something that's insulting or whatever. Like people were afraid of electricity years ago, in general, of electricity. Then computers are going to take the world. We've been hearing that since the first computer went online and so on.
Right, even before.
And it's always with, let's say, analog versus digital as well. Like all the analog guys were like, digital is shit. And in the beginning it was.
We lived this transition.
Yeah, and now if you want to have the best quality of sound, you are going to use digital. Turntables versus CDJs. When CDJs came out, everybody was like either laughing or looking at it as the same way as you're looking at AI right now. And realistically, if you went back in time and showed me the CDJ 3000 right now versus the turntable, I would throw it in the garbage. Like, it's just that much more advanced. But if you told my brain from that time, because I loved records and turntables so much, I would look at it as, something that this is going to kill the vinyl. Don't do it, and so on. First of all, you have no say in it.
Right.
And second, if it's going to be beneficial in any way. And also, we are now stuck with all music. Like, the music has been existing for so long, and digital music as well. Like, it doesn't matter the genre. Like, even in pop. And don't you feel like music in the last 10 years is just stuck? Not in the sense of like.
I mean, I stopped listening to music, so I thought it was me.
Well, I mean, in general, you don't have anything groundbreaking happening in the last. And I don't mean techno specifically, just music. And the last time that happened was when the electronic music was...
No new genres, you mean? Or
no new genres or no standout tracks, or, I don't know, going all the back in time, Kraftwerk's We Are the Robots, to, I don't know, first techno records by Jeff Mills and so on, or neo-pop and first Italo disco stuff and so on, because it was never heard before, and that was because electronic music was generally fresh, and now it's been existing for 50 years. What?
It's not new. It's not the new.
Yeah, but
for many decades. Actually.
But unless something groundbreaking happens technologically, it's not going to progress. Yes, of course, we have better synths, we have better limiters, compressors, and so on. It's going to maybe not sound better, but you will have more tools to operate easier. But something major needs to happen to have this shift, like from when we were shifting towards electronic music,
right?
Like, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're just going to be looping around otherwise. So if that's AI, I'm completely fine with it.
And what do you think could happen? I mean, to start talking about the future, because techno music, by its essence, kind of always. I mean, in techno music, the kind of strict techno music with no vocals, with no like literal themes. So it's just this force, you know, to dance and to listen in the club. This abstract, like post-apocalyptic. It always had kind of this post-apocalyptic topics, at least maybe not direct, but it was, as you say, it's this sound track for science fiction films or for fantasy games or for. How do you think techno will be related with the future if it was always talking about the future? How do you think this relationship will progress? You know what I mean?
You mean related to AI or just in general?
I don't know.
So I really don't know, because a lot of times when I'm talking with my colleagues, there's always this thing where I do see techno like that. For me, if you would ask the guys from the 90s or I don't know, early 2000s about my sound nowadays, they would probably say it's not techno. But for me techno was always about, you know, the futuristic sound and evolution, and that's why I wanted it to be a bit different. But evolution, not devolution, like the stuff that I was criticizing earlier.
Yeah.
So I can see it in that sense, just, you know, changing aesthetics maybe, or people. Right now you can't do many ideas that were not done before. I think one of the options is that the sounds themselves not just become, they already are as recognizable as tracks. What I'm talking about, take your favorite pop track, and then, of course, the minute you hear the first two beats, you will know it. But also when you hear the coin sound for Super Mario, you know it's a coin sound for Super Mario, right? So if you apply that to techno, where let's say the positions of the notes and the patterns are irrelevant in this discussion, obviously. But if the sounds that are being used for patterns are much more recognizable, which is what I am trying to do. Like if you have the same effect of listening to Super Mario's coin and you know it is, or Star Wars lightsaber, everybody knows
it's a nostalgic effect also, no?
Nostalgic as well, but it becomes recognizable if you hear it many times, and it has to be also very specific, because there are many things that are nostalgic and recognizable to us, but not to the general public, or are just generally not. You don't notice the sound because they are mundane. So I think it could be in that way. As I said, aesthetics, AI related. I don't know what is going to be logistic wise, like legally allowed to do with it. But I don't think also that there will be many limitations, because a lot of people are complaining that AI takes everything that has ever existed to learn and so on, and then isn't every artist doing that? Every single one. Like if you're into movies, you're watching other movies, you're getting influenced.
Actually, in that sense, the robot is only using things from the past and not trying to create something new.
No, because he's not copying this mic on this cup.
Jurassic
So
Park.
it's basically he's generating a new image based on everything that has been seen. So it's not chopping off anything. So, and it's only in his infancy. So we will have to see what's going to happen at the end of the year, let alone in 5 years with that. Because there's always this creativity that is a question mark for now, but so was AI a question mark until a few years ago. Like it was a distant future. So I don't know. I'm not a particularly smart person, and
Aren't you
I'm
a
just
futurist?
trying to vaguely predict what could happen.
Yeah.
But
Just to clarify to the ones listening only in audio, I just Jurassic Park because you have a Jurassic Park mug, coffee
Yes.
mug.
I was obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid, as many of us. But I also wanted to be a scientist before I did discover techno. So I don't know if it was a favor to science pulling me out of it, or I could have done something. I don't
We
know.
want a very good techno producer. We were talking, just to start wrapping up, we were talking off camera a lot. We catch up after 11 years, but we were talking about how you always kept steady in your vision and your love for techno music, and how you wake up and the first thing you do is open the software, production software. And also you mentioned that you have this vision that if there's one little Scalameriya there that would feel touched by your music, this is already a justification to keep doing it.
Yeah, so we were talking about good and bad experiences at parties, and I told you that sometimes, obviously, it happens to me that I'm not enjoying the party that I'm playing for. So be it because it's the wrong crowd or if there's not enough crowd. So at one point, I just decided that I'm going to do my best each time, and trying to do my best to enjoy it, because if there's one kid that's similar to me in that crowd that's maybe gonna get inspired, not to make exactly techno, but music in their own vision, then I need to do my best, and that it's satisfaction enough for all these years of doing it myself.
And what would you say to this little Scalameria out there that you might influence?
I don't know.
Some kid that is starting music now, for example, with 13 years old. What would you say to this kid?
Never give up, but work as hard as you can.
Thank you, Nikola, for coming here.
Thank you for having me, Pablo.
High five.
Cheers, man.
If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to give us a like and a comment under the video. If you want to see more, click here, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.